my name is Hope. I am just one of those many INTJs that you find storming across the internet, and today I am starting my journey looking into Enneagram personality tests. Now, in the past I have done the MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. I've done some socionics. I've taken a really interesting artificial intelligence powered test called the Color Drives. Soul Trace. That was a cool one. Yeah, so I'm just exploring various free personality tests on the internet, as you do, to get sort of a self-inventory, self-reflection, that sort of thing, and to demonstrate to others how this can be done for themselves. So the Enneagram is very interesting. I don't really like to subscribe to it as a core or central system, but it's fine to kind of supplement your other personality test systems. Let me say, I kind of see Enneagram as being about your childhood family dynamics and your formative years, and possibly even the trauma of past experiences. Because Enneagram is focused on core motivators or fears. I mean, some people like it. I don't really see it as being as practical and useful as other systems, so it hasn't really been at the top of my list, but it can provide some useful information. The other detriment about Enneagram is often that it is behind a paywall. So there are not necessarily very many free verified sources. There's a lot of course, YouTubers talking about it, different individuals who kind of push that as one of their core systems that they're doing typing within. But if you're just looking from a purely informational sort of realm or aspect, I feel like this system is more for feelers than it is for the thinker types. And I don't know, that might be rude of me to say, and maybe this series of tests will change my mind. I'm always open to having my mind changed. So we're going to start with a very basic Enneagram test. This is the one that pops up first on a Google search, pretty much. It is from Truity. Now, I do not typically love the tests put forth by Truity. I don't often think that they tend to be the most complex or accurate self-test, but we're going to do our best today, and then we will cross-check it against various other Enneagram tests like I am wont to do. So let us begin. Oh yeah, I wanted to say Enneagram has 9 types, and they are kind of focused or centered around kind of fears, essentially. Fears as motivators. That's another reason why I don't really love it, because I don't like pinpointing insecurities, and I want to keep that deeply buried as an INTJ. You shouldn't know my vulnerabilities. I shouldn't be, proudly displaying this as my personality type, right? Here you go, here's my type, here's my deepest fears and insecurities. There you go. I mean, as human beings, we already project that enough, so I don't feel like I need a label that tells other people this. But here I am regardless. Okay, we do have Likert, inaccurate to accurate, 5 points. Okay, I strive for perfection. I, speaking for myself, do not strive for perfection. I gave up on that long ago because I'm too flawed as a human being. I do try to meet my own standards, which tend to be decently high. Oh, it makes it bubbly. Makes me uncomfortable. I don't know. I work hard to be helpful to others. I do, but it's helpful in more of a reliable way. So being the expert. It is important to me that other people like me. Yes, but not more important than other things. It's not essential people like me. They're entitled to their own feelings and opinions. And it can be a negative view, that's fine. If you have a negative view of me, stop interacting with me. And just go away, we'll part ways, we'll go separate ways, because you're entitled to your view of me. And hopefully we are not forced to interact if we both don't enjoy it, I think relationships should be additive and complementary. And sometimes challenging, complementary in a challenging way, you're pushing each other or challenging each other to strive and do better. We'll go there. It is important to me to achieve great things. This is along with perfectionism. It's great. I mean, on what scale, what measure, Like, I don't think you're coming to me for great things, but a localized impact, I think I can do that. I make more significant contributions than the average person. To what? Significant contributions? What is the scale of significance? What am I contributing to? I think there's a lot of detail that's missing here for an accurate assessment of this quality. Yeah, I mean, that's where these tests get really difficult, right? Because it's all self-perception, and it's like, well, some people are more reasonable than others. Some people are very big-headed. Maybe they put down other people so they see the average person as being very low and themselves being very high. But I'm more self-deprecating, so usually it's the opposite. I'm going to say I'm average, sure. I feel my emotions very deeply. That is true. And you'll never know. I have a sense that other people will never truly understand me. Yeah, probably. Things just get lost in translation. Like, every person basically speaks their own language. And we should be so lucky to get a little bit insight into the language that other people speak. I think deeply about things. Now that's accurate. I am prepared for any disaster. I think I'll die in any disaster. Any kind of survival thing, I think I'm dead. Any disaster? No. Some disasters, sure. It is important to me to avoid pain and suffering at all times. Unfortunately, in the world, there are people who are under the threat of pain and suffering at all times, and it is very important to survive. I, luckily, am a bit privileged. I don't have to worry as much about this. I'm gonna go neutral. I seek out experiences that I know will make me feel happy or excited. I think people should do that in general. I think everybody's looking for, happy, exciting experiences. I think it just differs person to person what that looks like. My excitement is generated from a different source. My engagement, my awareness and focus are pulled towards different things than some other people's might be. So my happiness is not your happiness, probably. I mean, unless you are also an INTJ, then some of our happiness might overlap. I see the positive in every situation. I think this is an attitude that you can try to adopt. And it's usually the people who have faced hardships, who are able to pull through and gain perspective and reframe the situation into a more positive light as a learning experience. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily indicative of a personality type so much as it is an attitude that you can adopt. I am not afraid to tell someone when I think they are wrong. It depends on the situation. I'm not afraid to tell someone, but it's more of like, is me telling this person that they're wrong going to amount to anything? I'm not introverted thinking. I'm not a TI dominant or tool user. I'm not out here trying to correct every piece of inaccurate information, because some people, it's not gonna matter. You can tell someone they're wrong and then they'll just get hostile and defensive and they'll be less likely to change. So often what you gotta do is establish a rapport or a relationship with the person, and then you have to get them to trust you so that they show you the patterns of their thinking. And then once they start showing you the patterns of their thinking, you can sort of gently course correct them towards better ways of thinking. Now that's assuming that you, as the corrective force, are correct or justified and have good intentions and want to help them through this mutual relationship that you've established. Because I'm not suggesting manipulation. I would never suggest such a thing. It's against my values. Yeah, I'm not afraid. But is it worth it? Sometimes it's not. I let other people make the decisions. Like I've said before, I'm the leader of last resort. I do let other people make the decisions because they have the energy and they have the urgency and they have the need to make the decisions. And I don't need to make decisions. I have the availability and sometimes the resources to make decisions, but it's a tool for me. It's not a necessity. It's not a need. It's something I can access in order to make decisions, usually for myself, not for other people. So that's mostly accurate. I appreciate having rules that people are expected to follow. Sometimes I appreciate having rules that other people are expected to follow, but it's like, is there this nuanced space where we can correct certain rules, or is there space to navigate or negotiate these rules so that you can achieve better outcomes? So you need sort of like guiding principles, but sometimes really strict rules that can't be enforced are going to be ineffective. So I'm neutral. I am concerned about security more than anything else. Maybe like physical safety security, perhaps? But even then, sometimes I'm just oblivious to it. So am I really concerned about that? More than anything else? No. I think a lot about what will happen in the future. Yeah. I don't fit in with ordinary people. I think I fit in with ordinary people until people start paying attention to me. And then once people start paying attention to me, they're like, that's not one of them. That's not one of the ordinary people. And then I'm outed. People just fall into my uncanny valley. They're like, something is not quite. Let's go there. There is rarely a good reason for changing how things are done. I disagree. There's often good reason, but you should still be responsible whenever you're changing how things are done. I have said that view before, and I hold firm to that view. I always finish my chores. Yeah, but sometimes my mood is like, I'm not even gonna do my chores. Or my mood is like, I'm gonna half-ass my chores. So the quality of the chores is dependent upon the mood, but I will definitely force myself to do them. I am always trying to be a better person. I am. Not in a way where it's my whole personality, like false positivity. Some people just like, it's their whole identity is like self-improvement. And I'm like, I don't know, it seems a little bit insincere and gimmicky to me. But I am like sincerely always trying to improve myself and be a better person. I check carefully for mistakes and errors. I have really tried to build a foundation of doing this. Introverted intuition, it skips over a lot of steps. It conflates things, it looks at things holistically, it's impressionistic, and you lose a lot of details, and it's very easy to make mistakes. Make sure to check your professional emails for any kind of spelling or grammatical errors, otherwise you look like a fool. I like to be around people who I can help. I like to be useful, but I don't necessarily always want to be around people I can help, because then it doesn't feel like a mutual shared relationship. Like I want a very equal footing sort of relationship where there's like shared experiences and we sort of like build this world together. And it's not this relationship where one person is dependent upon the other in an imbalanced sort of way. So I'll go neutral. I like to feel that I am an important person in my social groups. I'm pretty self-deprecating, so I don't necessarily care about that. I'm just happy to be there. You know, I want to participate and just be a person. I'm fine being a little groupie in the background, that's fine. It is important to me to be successful. That I do think is true. It's not like success in terms of like, can I make the most money, or can I have the status to be like prominent in my field? Can I make global impactful changes? It's a quality standard that I have set for myself. The organizations I belong to would not function well without me. No, look, you need to realize that the world goes on without you. I know, it's heartbreaking. Now, I will say there are certain linchpins, like certain people who are the backbone of the organization. They are an institution unto themselves. And I love those people. I think they're fantastic. They're usually extroverts. Sometimes I've been in that position and it was like I was this sort of like strange glue that was holding things together somehow. I didn't even realize it myself. And whenever I drifted away and whenever I exited a certain organization, it sort of dissolved and fell apart without me, which was kind of interesting, you know, because INTJs, we often enter into a space and we make it our own with our own sort of systems and efficiencies. Usually our goal is that it will run without us. But there's a very interesting value component. We leave behind the TE, but we withdraw our NIFI, and there's this weird sort of aura that INTJs have that once they leave a certain situation, if there's not someone else who's going to take it up, it might collapse. It's a very interesting phenomena that I've noticed a few times over the course of my life. But mostly the world will keep on turning even when I die. I often feel overtaken by my emotions. No. I have always felt different from other people. Sure. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people feel that way. I like to analyze things from every angle. Absolutely. I always have a plan for what I would do if things go wrong. Yes. I avoid situations that bring up negative feelings. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't shy away from negative feelings. Sometimes things happen, but if you can prevent something from needlessly happening, I shouldn't go into a situation where I know 100% for certain there's going to be a bad outcome or there's going to be negative feelings involved, unless it's like completely necessary for the achievement of a certain objective. If I have more of a feelings goal, then I'm never going to enter into a negative feelings situation. However, if my goal is beyond feelings, it's something that supersedes or is more important than feelings, then I'm not going to shy away from it just because there are going to be negative feelings involved. Sometimes it's unavoidable. I seek excitement. I think excitement looks different to different people. And just because I don't always express my excitement or enthusiasm doesn't mean I don't get excited, doesn't mean I don't feel excitement or being deeply engaged into something. I do think it is accurate that I seek excitement, but I don't often seek thrill or excessive risk. Compared to other people, I think I should go neutral. I am good at seeing the bright side of things when others complain. Yeah, I don't think complaining is typically very helpful. It's fine if other people do it, like if they need to vent their emotions and complain about something. That's fine. I realize that some people need a release valve and it's part of their process. I personally don't really have a need to complain. It's probably mostly going to be kept to myself. Where negativity comes in for me is often seeing risks that other people don't necessarily scope in. So they're like, oh, you're being pessimistic about this. And I'm like, no, I am identifying potential risks. But it's not complaining, it's more like future focused. Here is the thing that could happen, that could go wrong. And we need to take this seriously and assign sort of like a probability of risk of occurrence and maybe the impact and the consequences of that risk. And then people are like, oh, you're being too uptight or too hesitant, that sort of thing. And that's just, par for the course. I do not hesitate to call people out when they are behaving badly. This goes with correcting people when they're wrong, because bad behavior is also kind of incorrect and disrespectful too, right? So it depends on the situation and the people involved and the harm that's being caused and whether the behavior can be course corrected or not. So all of these factors go into my analysis of whether I will call someone out. I would get particularly triggered if someone is harming someone I care about with their bad behavior. In that case, I won't hesitate because I do have this sort of defensiveness, need to kind of like protect the people I do care about and hold dear to me. I'll go more on the accurate side. I go along with what other people want. Again, this goes along with the idea of energy, of who has the energy, whether there's a certain risk involved, whether my mood is there, it's for the most part, sure, if it's not harming anyone, if it seems important that I participate, if it seems important that I go along and it's not harming me, if it's not harming other people, then sure. But whenever we start getting into problems, again, is if there's bad behavior, disrespect, if people are being inconsiderate of other people's attitudes or limitations, people's feelings sometimes, and sensitivities. So I think I'm neutral. People should follow the rules instead of doing what they feel like doing. It depends on the situation and the severity, right? So what are the stakes involved, basically? If it's a low stakes sort of situation, then the rules don't matter as much. And sometimes the rules are incorrect, they're wrongly founded, or they haven't been updated. Maybe the system is too slow to update the rules to accommodate what is actually occurring within reality. I seek out relationships that offer me some type of protection. That's not really a concern for me. It's not really what I'm looking for. I'm pretty self-sufficient. I can clearly visualize what could happen in the future. Yeah, sure. What could happen? Sure. Average people often find me a bit weird. Yeah, I think that's probably true. But it's only if they're paying attention to me at all. I like to do things as I've always done them. Not typically. I think I've said this before. I'm very same but different. Along a sort of conceptual pattern. It's almost like I want the context or the circumstances surrounding that pattern to be slightly different or varied each time, but still following that, how do I get my hand to go? That central trend line, still, hot karate chop, still following the central hot, yeah, hua, trend line of patterning and behavior, but maybe slightly different, just to get like a different feel going, just like generate some excitement or something. I persist until a task is done. Now, isn't that an INTJ? I spend time trying to discover and correct my faults and weaknesses. I do. I hold myself to very high standards. Yeah. I'm a natural caretaker. Absolutely not. I want people to admire me. I would like people to admire me and recognize my strengths. It's not completely necessary though, but it is one of those overarching sort of conceptual goals. I want to achieve a lot in my life. Again, what's the scale? What are we doing here? Sure. If I am honest, I feel that I am a bit better than other people. Oof, I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. I think people are uniquely classed into being better than other people at different things. It depends a lot upon experience and self-awareness and growth and sort of the skills and the network of skills that you're developing over the course of your life. So no one's good at everything. We all make trade-offs. That's just the story of life and humanity and the limited or scarce resources that humans have to work with in this physical plane of existence, and we're all coping with it, you know? I feel a deep sense of grief for what I have lost. I am lucky enough that I haven't suffered a lot of significant loss over the course of my life. I know. Looking ahead, as people age, people that are close to me, I'm just always going to be incurring more and more loss as I age. That is also the story of humanity and the lived experience. And, you know, we have a limited time on the earth, and we just have to figure out what to do with that and how to make that meaningful. So I think there's a lot of grief in loss that is outside of death. You can lose friendships and relationships. You can lose the conceptual idea of something. Like you can lose your sense of religion, you can lose your sense of direction. All of these little things, like senses of identity and parts and pieces of who you are and places and things and ideas you've left behind, and all of that comes with a sense of grief. We often see things objectively from different experiences. We see it sort of abstracted and conceptually, and so we're not always tied to things emotionally because we know that we can lose them and that we probably will lose them. And so it's almost experiencing the grief before the grief occurs, simulating what could be and what might be, and the different emotional circumstances that comes with being a human, thinking through that and conceptualizing that. And self-reflection. There is always going to be a certain sense of grief and loss. But because of the actual circumstances, and I've been lucky, I haven't lost people who are really deeply close to me, I feel like I need to go neutral on this. I am an unusual sort of person. Sometimes, it depends on if you believe the hype. I take time to understand things more deeply than most people do. I think that's true than most people, sure. Does that make me better in any way? No, not really. Kind of makes me more self-aware and self-reflective and such, but I mean, is that helping me materially? Kind of, yeah. I think it's helpful. You know, in the sense of like planning and having a will and intention for who I would like to become over the course of my life and how to improve my interactions with people. It is important to me to be prepared for any emergency. Yes and no. You shouldn't catastrophize to the point of being like a doomsday prepper. You know, I think you need to be rational and you need to think about, yeah, things are possible, you know, but you shouldn't let that impede the course of your life. Like, you shouldn't be deeply neurotic about it. You need to assign probabilities of occurrence. So any emergency, no. But some emergencies you should be prepared for sure. I distract myself from any sad feelings that arise. Distract, not typically, no. Reframe is probably more correct. I often make changes in my life when things get boring. I don't often find myself bored, but if I were, I would. I tend to be more optimistic than most people. The world is so terrible sometimes, and it's kind of in a sorry state at the moment. Sure, I tell people what I think, even if it is hard to hear. Communicating what you think and hearing what other people think is important. I would rather follow the group than push for what I want. It depends on the situation. I feel most comfortable in organizations with a clear hierarchy. I like individual experts who are each contributing to a common goal. I don't really care much for hierarchy. I can respect it. It's not an end-all be-all. I take measures to protect myself and my loved ones from harm. Yeah, sure. I make plans for many years into the future. Vague plans. Very, very vague conceptual plans. I am an unusually unique person. Could you pick me out of a police lineup? Hopefully I would never be in one. Considering the whole scope of human experience and everything, the fact that I'm an introverted person. I'm a little strange, I'm a little weird, I have my own sort of unique patterns and processes and stuff, but don't we all? Am I unusually unique? Probably not. I dislike trying new methods or procedures. No, I am willing to try new things, especially if it's methods and procedures. That's where I live. I focus on my responsibilities and duties. Yes. I read books that help me be more productive or better at what I do. College kind of ruined me. I don't really read books as much anymore. I read a lot of papers. I read internet resources. If I'm studying for a specific certification, I will read the study materials. But a lot of times I will watch videos, listen to podcasts. So there's different information sources than just reading books. Am I taking in information that helps me be more productive or better at what I do? Yeah. I put a lot of pressure on myself to do things right. I think competence is important. I take the initiative to help other people and make their lives easier. If it seems like the person is consenting to my help or desiring my help in some way. So I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to make assumptions and then try to help someone who doesn't want or need help. So I'm gonna go neutral. I put in the effort to make a good impression on other people. Probably not as much as I should. I kind of just want to appear as I am. I don't necessarily want to sway people. I think people should form their own impressions about me. I don't want to construct a false narrative about who I am, because that feels like manipulation. So I probably don't put in as much effort as I should. I set ambitious goals for myself. From the outside looking in, they might seem ambitious. But if I've scoped it, the resources and the time it takes, and it just feels more like an eventuality, the goal does, rather than ambition. I don't really consider myself to be a deeply ambitious person, even though maybe to some other people, occasionally it might seem that way. I am an important member of my social groups. I don't necessarily think so. I can describe my emotions in a lot of depth and detail. I find it very amorphous and hard to do so. My emotions very much seem like sort of like this block of complexity, and it takes a lot of processing to kind of pull that apart and sort of figure out like what is truly there. But sometimes I'll write poetry, and the poetry is more like a mood or a vibe, and I don't really think it's necessarily the descriptive words of what an emotion is, but it's like the vibe or the feeling of the emotion. It depends on how you feel about poetry, I think. I'm gonna go neutral. I often feel like an outsider. Sometimes feels like I'm not quite being like seen or understood for what or who I am necessarily. People aren't really understanding me, and I don't really understand why they're not understanding me. So it's more like that. I find my mind to be a very interesting place. Oh yeah, sure. I am always aware of what can go wrong in a situation. Yeah, I am an internal auditor, so it's kind of part and parcel of the job as well. I'm like pretty chill about this analysis though. I have many ways of avoiding situations that get me down. Yeah, I think coping techniques, right? I am always up for a new adventure. I want to say that optimistically I am. I believe that things usually work out for the best. Yeah, sometimes even hardships. Sometimes it can feel like you're really running up against a wall repeatedly. You're trying to like make something happen or force something to happen, and it just doesn't come together, doesn't work. But then some of those experiences are kind of transferable. And eventually with time and the right circumstances, things do come together. And all of those sort of past experiences and lessons you've taken away and the skills you have learned and integrated into your network of skills, all of that finally coalesces and finally pays off. I stand up for what I believe in, even if it upsets other people. I would like to think so. I let other people take the lead. Mostly, yes. I dislike people who disrupt things by breaking the rules. What was the outcome of them breaking the rules? Did it harm people? Was it really annoying and unnecessary? I'm neutral. There's not enough information to answer that. I make alliances with people who can help me stay safe and secure. Alliances? Are we on Survivor? That's a weird phrasing. I am often looking ahead toward what is coming next. Sure. I have different interests than most people. There is a group of people who have an interest in the same thing you do, regardless of what it is. They exist, and the internet has truly exposed us to this notion that there is a fandom for everything. And there are people, and you can find your people too. It still might be hard to connect to them. Social interactions are difficult, regardless of whether they take place in person or online. If you think this is true about yourself, I think you should go out and look for people who share your interests. It might improve your life. The traditional way of doing things is the best way. Nah. I feel like I'll always stand against that. I am a responsible and reliable person. I would like to think so. I have a lot of plans for how I can improve myself, sure. I make sure that even small details are correct. There are so many small details that escape my awareness that I can't possibly ensure that that would be correct. I really try. Go neutral. I enjoy caring for others and their needs. I'm bad at it, and that reduces the likability of it. I want to be a person that others can look up to. Sure. I push myself to succeed. Yeah. I make important contributions to my community. Okay, there's another one of these. Contributions, at least it's kind of narrowing it down and specifying it a little bit more. To my community. But it's like, in what way? Not really a huge community-based person. I'm gonna be more on that side. I rarely have strong emotions. I rarely express strong emotions. I feel I never truly belong in social groups. Like I've said, I think it's possible to find your people. And you can find social groups that you do feel a little bit more comfortable in, more at home. It might take a lot of work to establish that, but I think it can be done, and I've done it in several different situations, and they've collapsed, and I've had to move on and rebuild elsewhere. But I think, again, that's just part of life, and you have to have an attitude of wanting to engage in that again and trying to create a similar sort of circumstance where you do feel like you have community and belonging. I want to learn as much as I can about how the world works. Sure. It is important for me to understand what can go wrong in a situation. Understanding what can go wrong in a situation? Yeah, I think that's pretty important, having that awareness and understanding so that you can possibly preempt it, prevent it, mitigate risk and loss, and maybe have some contingencies in the wings. I take steps to ensure I don't feel sad or lonely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's positive, proactive things you can do, or coping mechanisms after the fact. Take those steps so that you don't feel sad or lonely and kind of get into a cycle of depression. Trying new things keeps life interesting. Sure. I am an upbeat person. I think I'm a neutral person. I am usually the one who takes a stand when others won't. I'm in the middle of that. It depends on the circumstances. Other people have stronger opinions than I do. Oftentimes, yes. I think just because I can really see maybe like different perspectives or points of view on a certain situation, that I'm a little bit more hesitant or reluctant to settle upon one and then die upon that hill. But if it like triggers a deeply held value, then it's like no holds barred. Everyone has a role to play in society and a duty to do their best. Let me neutral on that. I don't particularly frame it that way. I am concerned with protecting what I have. Sure. I have a good sense of what my future holds. Yeah, you can look ahead and sort of scope that. I am an average person with ordinary likes and dislikes. What if that was your affirmation, your daily affirmation? I am an average person with ordinary likes and ordinary dislikes. I try new ways of doing things just to see if they will work. Sure, I have a great deal of willpower. Hopefully. Self-improvement is a major interest of mine. It's more of like the understanding of self. That's like more of the major interest. But the practical application is pretty important because I am looking for self-improvement in the sort of like evolution of the self and having some will and intention behind who I will become in the future. Oh, we're doing a work style survey? That's interesting. Oh, I love my job, honestly. My current job aligns with my values, offers flexibility and ownership in the types of projects I take on, and my job allows me to utilize and sharpen my problem-solving skills. I'm an internal auditor, for reference, and I do really enjoy that work. What are the top 3 factors you look for in an ideal job? Yes. Autonomy and independence, meaning and purpose. Yes. Oh, I can choose 3. Okay. Oh, there's so many good ones. Okay, let me name some runner-ups. Career advancement is important so you don't feel like you're going to stagnate. Connection and community. Supportive colleagues and team culture can really make or break whether you enjoy your work as well. I have found that to be true. You don't want to be in a toxic work environment, so that's also very important. Job security and stability, also good for, to have a stable paycheck, and it helps relieve the tension so that you can focus on the work at hand. Creativity and self-expression, that is a very high up there runner-up, but it's not a make or break sort of thing, but it is important. I don't really love fast-paced work environments, being the introvert I am, taking longer to process information. I do like having the ability or flexibility to change tasks, so it's not routine, doing the same thing over and over again. Work-life balance, also pretty important. Financial compensation, of course. I think all of these are pretty important, but I think these sort of intrinsic motivators is probably at the core of why I like my job. What do you think makes a company or organization a good place to work? Clear expectations, very important. The boundaries to protect yourself as a worker, so you're not exploited for your work project, that's pretty important. Collaboration, I prefer collaboration over competition. You don't want your colleagues to eat you alive. You want them to be helpful, important information resources. I like having flexibility in the kind of work that I do and in my chosen work schedule, because it helps me to be able to direct my own sort of tasks and the work style and the way that I work. I think that's pretty important to me. What is your age? We're gonna get the age range here. 26 to 35, that's how old I am. What is your gender? I am a woman. I do gender identify as she, her. Yeah, let's get results. Do. Yeah, get my personality results. Okay, yeah. Anyway, let's see. Your Enneagram results. The graphic below shows your scores for each of the 9 Enneagram types. The larger the area of a portion, the higher your score for that particular type. Okay. Oh. Look how chonky that is. That's pretty expected for an INTJ. So, me, INTJ, Enneagram type 5. It was expected, but let's see. The investigator. Prioritize self-sufficiency through knowledge and competency. That's like the very definition of who I am. Most of their energy is directed inward, expanding their intellect such that they can see large, complex issues with clarity and precision. Yep. 5s enjoy deepening their understanding of the world and play a key role in the intellectual advancement of society. Oh ho ho. Appears lost in thought or absent-minded. Extremely difficult to crack inner world. In-depth knowledge on specific subjects of interest. Gives insightful, well-thought-out responses. Thinks extensively before speaking. Has clear boundaries between family, friends, and work. Withdrawn and extremely independent. So Enneagram 5s are defined by their desire to conserve their energy. Yeah. And avoid being drained by engagement with the outside world. Focus on being knowledgeable and competent, very true. Want to be self-sufficient as possible. Enjoy deepening understanding of the world, expanding intellect, minimizing their physical and relationship needs. Deepest fear. Oh man, we are getting into it, aren't we? I'll tell you if I feel like this is true of me. 5s fear being overwhelmed by their own needs and the needs of others. To cope with this fear, they withdraw from relationships and maintain a minimalist lifestyle, focusing on the intellectual as an escape from the demands of the world. I wish I could say that wasn't true, but yeah, there's a fair amount of diminishing of my own needs that goes on. That's true. I don't necessarily fear being overwhelmed by the needs of other people. It's more like I fear not having the requisite tools to meet the needs of other people and then being judged harshly for not having those tools. I would say that's probably more true. Fives are motivated by a desire to be competent and possess a strong understanding of their environment. This motivation drives them to nearly constant state of learning and knowledge accumulation. I think that's true. How rare? In a Truity study of more than 54,000 respondents, type 5s were found to make up approximately 10% of the population. More common among men, 7% of women. So it's a little bit more rare, I suppose. But it depends on people's self-report and self-typing. Pioneers of independent critical thinking, inquisitive and curious, introverted and analytical, gather and process information, synthesize patterns and ideas. And this very much aligns with kind of what INTJs are all about as well. Workspaces are typically minimalist, with the exception of a collection of items pertaining to their core interests. Fiercely nonconformist and care little about trends or accepted ways of progressing through stages of life, also true. Are the most introverted. Oh, it hurts me. Rather than focusing on relationships, primary focus on gaining knowledge. But you can use that. You can focus that energy of learning and gaining knowledge on a relationship. So you can kind of like twist it towards the relationship to advance the relationship. A little bit of life hacking here. Appear withdrawn or disinterested, but that's not necessarily in fact true. But that's how people tend to interpret us. Fives tend to avoid fear and anxiety by withdrawing and carefully protecting their inner resources. I think that goes along fairly well with having introverted feeling in this sort of third position of the cognitive function ego stack. Fives are self-sufficient, crave freedom and autonomy from outer world influences. Yes. So we can kind of see which one was higher. 6 and 4 were very equal for me in my results. So we'll read them both, and maybe they're both true. Like 4s, 5-wing 4 tends to be more in touch with their emotions and more self-expressive than other 5s. This tends to be creative, reflective, and sensitive. 5-wing 6, practical, helpful, and organized, while still fiercely independent, more cooperative and loyal than other 5s. They excel in troubleshooting and solving complex problems. I kind of identified with 4 and 6, so who knows what that really says about me and what is true. Maybe it's all true. I mean, I could see either side. We contain multitudes. Values, freedom and autonomy. Researching alone in a secluded area for the rest of their lives. I think I like cooperation and collaboration a bit more than that, so I don't need to be alone researching for my whole life. Sometimes I do dream about it, though. My fantasy that I know never would come to pass. Moving to maybe something like Provence, France. Just these beautiful fields of flowers and owning a small bookshop. Maybe trying my best to learn French. Living this quiet, understated lifestyle surrounded by books that it doesn't really require good internet connection too. It doesn't really require a lot of my efforts, and while I might have meaningful relationships and little adventures and stuff, there's not a lot of anxiety and demands and focus upon me. That's sort of like the fantasy sort of situation. May appear calm and collected on the surface, but when topics of interest come up in conversation, 5s transform into a giddy and energetic version of themselves. Yeah, and I think this is what attracts people to INTJs and I guess Enneagram 5s. The light and the meaning and the intensity, it lives within us and is very present in this sort of like calm and contained form, and people catch glimpses and flashes of it and they're like, that's intriguing. And maybe that's what makes us mysterious or endearing. I'm not sure. If you are an INTJ, do you think this is what people find attractive about you? Okay, healthy. Thought pioneers in fields of interest. Sure. See large complex issues with clarity and precision. That's true. Dedication and genuine curiosity. Subject matter experts. That's the truest thing this optimistic paragraph has said. 5s are offbeat, withdrawn, emotionally closed off. I think this one can be worked on. Opt to present an aloof and distant aura. I think that's the way people perceive us. I don't think I'm intending to put that off. Maybe I am to some extent. Unhealthy. Cut off their entire social world. You should definitely avoid doing that. Develop tunnel vision. I have heard that some INTJs are kind of prone to that. So really avoid that as well. It's very dangerous. Far off, radical views, losing grip with reality. I mean, I don't think that's just fives or INTJs. I think anyone can kind of fall into these sorts of unhealthy attitudes. Lack of emotional awareness and foresight can find themselves in heated disputes with no clear answers. Some friendships may be severed in the process. Now that's true. Whenever things go poorly for me, friendships are severed in the process. You may rationalize that they're better off without the presence of people altogether. Don't choose that for yourself. Can become addicted to far-off theories few can wrap their heads around. Yeah, I mean, that's why I try to ground myself in reality and the practical application of information. So lean into your extroverted thinking if you're an INTJ 5 Enneagram type. And then just be a Midwesterner. You will have this sort of self-deprecation. You won't feel intellectually superior. Just grow up in the Midwest of the United States and, let me squeeze on past you. That's the attitude. Let me bring something to the potluck. Growth. Practice healthy hobbies that get you out of your head. Absolutely. Running, yeah, I go for jogs. I actually wear a weighted vest to ground me further within reality. Yeah, I've been playing Dance Dance Revolution, but now that the weather has warmed up, I'm gonna be outside more often. So I probably will be doing DDR a little bit less. It's okay to ask for help. That's true. And sometimes you should ask for help just to give other people the chance to help you. Because sometimes people have that need and that urgency to help you, and you should just let them help you. Step outside your comfort zone. That's just good practical advice. Explore emotions. Sure, write poetry. That's my suggestion. Learn to accept outer world feedback. Yeah. Like I said, INTJ, lean into your extroverted thinking. Put some of your ideas into action so that you can get that outer world feedback and iterate upon it, and it will only make your plans and solutions over time better. Okay, I think we have fully explored type 5. If you have taken this and you are with me, welcome to the 5 Club, I guess. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, even if that day finds you prioritizing self-sufficiency. Shouldn't we all?